Who the hell can wait till morning? Talk now at latenightsportsradio.com.
Having a better week than Chip Kelly, it is the Fantasy Greek. Starts in 60 minutes here on Late Night Sports Radio, the Week 3 edition. Hello, folks, and welcome to the program. I am Keith Gree from 87sportsfans.com. And as always, in the other hot seat is the Fantasy Greek himself, Jim Sarantias from thefantasygreek.com. Jim, happy Wednesday.
Keith, happy Wednesday to you. Boy, I wish we had the coffee still going. It's been one of those days, but, you know,
it's all right.
We're gonna get through it, buddy.
Our hamstrings are intact, so the world is a
there were quite a few of those injuries, weren't there?
Happy place.
Isn't that what happens? You have a bad game, and oh my God, I pulled my hamstring.
That's right. And then what happens is that you have such a god awful game that you spend the night drinking, and then you are at Denny's the next day having a moons over my hammy, and then you remember what the problem was all along. Sorry, little joke there. And now all of a sudden I'm hungry. Go figure how my brain works. Anyway, so here's the game plan, kids. We're going to go weekend by week up. Wow, matchup by matchup for this weekend's NFL games, and we are going to go ahead and give you all of the necessary information you need to set your fantasy lineup. However, if you shall have some lineup-specific questions that are particular to your individual situation, the phone number is 585-633-7487. That's 585-633-7487. Or, you know what, hit up the tweeter and tweet at the hashtag AskTFG, and we will get your lineup questions, as many as we can, into the program. So, sound good, kids? Sounds great. So, without further ado, whatever that is, really, let's head up and start with Thursday night's game. That is the Washington Redskins versus the New York Giants, the adrift New York Giants, the suddenly unable to manage a game clock situation to save their lives, New York Giants. The last 2 weeks have been just an absolute horror show at the second half of the fourth quarter for the Giants. From the first week where apparently Eli Manning told Rashad Jennings not to score and try to keep the clock running. They came back and bit him in the butt when the Cowboys won on the final possession. To last week when a very similar situation played out and the Falcons scored 14 unanswered points to win the game 24-20 in New York, New Jersey. You know what I mean. On the other hand, you have the Redskins who beat the Rams, the same Rams that were able to upset the Seattle Seahawks the night before or the week before, and they did it with some interesting contributions here. Rookie running back Matt Jones out of Florida, 19 rushes, 123 yards on 2 TDs, and yes, he's still splitting time technically with Alfred Morris, but I'm sure Jim will have something to say on that. The Redskins, for all of their dysfunction in the preseason with the Robert Griffin III situation and everything going into it, haven't, looked that bad as a team. Say what you will. They're 1-1. Giants still haven't won this game. They're at home, but I think this is the game because the Giants have been in position to win both of those games. I think they get in that position and they don't choke this one away. I'm going to pick the Giants at home.
I'm going to take the Giants too, and I think it's taking them because I think of the way the Giants are structured. This is a team that really, at least so far as what we've seen in these first two games, they're a team that is meant to pass first. And I don't think any team has really taken on the Redskins squarely like the Giants are going to. And I think this is a big game for Odell Beckham Jr. I think it's a big game for Shane Vereen. So Shane Vereen, definitely you can consider him as a strong flex play. Odell Beckham Jr. is a weekly must start. Eli Manning, I would put him. I have him ranked at 14th among the quarterbacks. So I think there's other quarterbacks you could play ahead of him if you happen to have them. If you want to see who they are, come out to thefantasygreek.com and check out our weekly player rankings. They're already up on the site. And outside of that, for the Redskins, their biggest problem, they had this great defense that has been playing well, but their offense doesn't seem to be firing exactly on all cylinders, except last week we saw a great rush game. The Giants haven't been really challenged in the rushing attack. They're only giving up 68 yards per game. They've given up a total of 2 TDs on the season, and that's in part because of these battles they've had by air. And I think we're going to see the Redskins ground it and pound the football this week. So I like Alfred Morris as an RB2. I think after what we saw last week with Matt Jones, he's going to see more of the rock. In fact, last week they pretty much split the ball evenly, almost 20 carries each. So I think we could see the same thing, and you can work in Mac Jones as a flex play, especially in larger leagues. Keep Jordan Reed active. Keep Pierre Garçon active because they're the most highly targeted receivers on the team. Jordan Reed is definitely a TE1 this week, where Pierre Garçon is a very strong wide receiver 3. But that's where I think it ends. I think Eli Manning and the team get it going this week and win one at home.
All right, the Cincinnati Bengals travel.
I will say one thing. I don't have all the confidence in the world in this game, meaning it is going to be a tough game. It's a tough game to call.
Yeah, because the Redskins are playing better than I thought they would. And I know they're 1-1.
Yeah.
But the Giants are an enigma because they're better than 0-2. They've been in a position to win both of those games. I just don't think they lose this game at home. So,
I'm just pulling up real quick, Keith, my winners table for all the listeners out there. The Fantasy Greek, we offer a private part of our site. We have a lot of free stuff, but we also have some stuff that's a subscription only. It's under $20 for the year. And I have what's called the winners table, where we have our predictions as well as confidence rankings of these teams, which could help you with some of your office pools. But let me see if it's slow coming up, Keith. So why don't we keep moving, and when it comes up, I'll let you know.
Okay. The Cincinnati Bengals travel to the Baltimore Ravens. The 2-0 Bengals, who are playing pretty good ball for the first 2 games, beating the Chargers last week 24-19 on their home field, even though the Chargers were within striking distance a couple times, but they were able to hold them off. The Ravens 0-2, losing week 1 to the Denver Broncos in a defensive slugfest, and then losing last week to the Raiders in a barn burner, 37-33. The Ravens giving up 351 yards to Derek Carr through the air. Michael Crabtree caught 9 balls on it for 111 yards. Latavius Murray, only 65 yards, but a touchdown as well. My point being is, sans Terrell Suggs, this is not your father's Ravens defense. The Bengals, on the other hand, Gio Bernard stepped in. Jeremy Hill had some fumbling issues. Bernard runs for 123 yards. Andy Dalton, 16 of 26 for 214 yards, but 3 touchdowns. The Bengals are playing some pretty good ball, and I think they catch the Ravens in a soft spot where Justin Forsett is slow go. Thank you, Mark Trestman. And the defense is not performing where it is, where it has been. Minus Haloti Ngata, this season as well, who is now a Detroit Lion. I'm picking the Bengals on the road here.
Keith, I am too, and I'm surprised that I'm picking them because the Ravens in the past 3 seasons are 18-6 at home, which means out of every 4 games at home, they only lose 1. And I think that if this is a new set of 4 games, this is the one they're going to lose, and they're going to lose it because there's just some significant problems on their team, mostly on the offensive side of the ball. And we saw last week against the Raiders, a team that, last year was a laughing stock, and this year is a better team, but still we can't say it's one of the better teams in the league. Their defense just didn't show up, so we don't really know what we're getting. And the Bengals, if you can give them at least one thing, they've been consistent. They're still playing solid football. They're showing some offense. They're showing some defense. I like Andy Dalton this week as a borderline QB1. The fact that David Carr threw 3 touchdowns on the Ravens last week, I think can give you some confidence that Andy Dalton can throw at least 2 this week, which makes A.J. Green a must-start. I think Gio Bernard should be in as a flex play as usual. Jeremy Hill is definitely a start this week, but I will caution that the Ravens have only given up an average of 83 rushing yards on the ground and just 1 TD in these past 2 games. So it will be incumbent on Hill to score for you really to get your top value out of him. Start the Bengals DST as usual. For the Ravens, Steve Smith, I dig this, Keith. He has been targeted 23 times, which makes him tied for 5th most in the league.
Wow.
That's amazing. I didn't even think that's. I knew he was being worked significantly in the offense, but that's quite a bit. So because of that, you got to start him. Even if Joe Flacco throws up 200 yards and 1 touchdown, you got to think if there's a good chance it's going to Steve Smith, and it ain't going to him. It's going to Crockett Gilmore, who I've put down as a borderline TE1, meaning he's you'd have to have you must have missed out on the top guys for you to look at Crockett Gilmore, but I think you could do worse. For Justin Forsett, it's a tough play again this week for him because the Bengals are only giving up 80 yards on the ground, but they've given up 2 pass TDs, 2 running backs. So if Forsett's going to make some noise, it's going to be in the passing game. Bengals on the road.
The New Orleans Saints travel to the Carolina Panthers. The Panthers, who are missing Kelvin Benjamin for the season with a knee injury, we knew that was going to be a big blow to their offense. And true to form, they're 7th in rushing yards per game, but 31st through the first two games in passing yards per game. This team is being led by its defense, 7th and 8th in rushing yards and passing yards allowed, respectively. They're also the 2nd best scoring defense, the one that really counts. The New Orleans Saints are going to be hurt. Luke McCown will get the start with Drew Brees nursing an injured shoulder. That is huge against the Carolina Panthers. I don't care what could possibly be done by Mark Ingram and company in the running game. You cannot be limping into this game against the Carolina Panthers. It's just that simple. They lost last week to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. If Jameis Winston can hang 26 points on this team, so can Cam Newton in a variety of ways. I'm taking the Panthers at home.
Keith, I'm rolling with the Panthers, too, at home. I think the biggest reason here is the Saints' defense just hasn't shown up this season. In the passing game, they're allowing 250 yards per game and 2 TDs per game, which makes Cam Newton a top 12 start this week. So if you have him, get him on the fantasy gridiron. The Saints are giving up the 5th most fantasy points to the position. Because of that, Greg Olsen must start tight end as usual every single week. Got to like Jonathan Stewart this week. Get him in there as a strong RB2. The Saints have allowed 130 yards on the ground and 1 TD per game to the position. Panthers DST, you give them a go. Look, this is a tough defense. They've only given up roughly around a couple hundred yards per game, 1 TD per game. Drew Brees is just, even if he's healthy, I think this is a tough game for the Saints to win, period. That having been said, it looks like he's going to play. I think he's going to play. I saw his press conference. We've got a real nice short article out there with regards to what he said. You can watch the press conference yourself at thefantasygreek.com. But I just don't know what we're going to get out of him. And because of that, I think Brandon Cooks is a shaky wide receiver, too. He's probably more of a wide receiver 3 this week. And even Mark Ingram, he's going to have a tough game. He's going to be like Jeremy Hill. Panthers are only giving up 80 yards on the ground. So for him to get some value for you, he's going to have to do a little bit in the passing game, which I think he can. He's going to have to score, which I think he must. And because of that, look at him as an RB2 this week. I'm going to stick with the Panthers, Keith, at home, and I hope Drew Brees gets better because, quite frankly, I just like him. He's a good quarterback.
All right, the Oakland Raiders travel to the Cleveland Browns. The Raiders, who have put a bunch of points up last week against the Ravens, and the Browns, who are not really known exactly for their offense. Let's put it that way, and we'll put it nicely. The problem here, kids, is that the Raiders are the worst in scoring defense after 2 weeks. And the Browns' defense came to play last week. I know it was Tennessee, and they got a rookie quarterback and whatnot, and no real established running game. But even though they still gave up 98 yards to Dexter McCluster on the ground, if you watch that game, bodies were flying around, flying to the ball. trying to make life miserable for Mariota, which they did for about 3 quarters. For the Raiders, Derek Carr, is as good as advertised. It's just a question of the talent around him, and the talent showed up last week against the Ravens. But at it being a home game for the Browns, Josh McCown is going to start at quarterback. It was announced today. I picked this on Monday night to be the Browns because I'm a big believer in Johnny Manziel, but I still think the Browns can win this one even without Manziel, even though he really hasn't done much. It's just more of a vibe thing with me, in case you're wondering what the hell am I talking about. But McCown brings the veteran presence back under center, even though I don't agree with it, but I'm going to pick the Browns still at home based on the fact that this team is better scoring defense than you think.
Keith, and I am going to disagree with you on this one. I think the big problem with the Browns is scoring 2 TDs. Josh McCown can't do it on his own, and I think the best you're going to get out of him is 1. Even if Isaiah Crowell gets in the end zone, that's 2. And I really do think that the Raiders are capable of attacking the Browns through both facets of the game, both in the pass game and the ground game. Latavius Murray, for example, he's a must-start this week, borderline RB1. Browns allow an average of 160 yards rushing per game and 1 TD. So that gets them to 1. Look, Carr put up 3 TDs last week, and even if you give it to the Browns that he's not going to be able to put up 3. Let's even get us down to 1. Let's get it 14-14. I'd bet on our good man Sebastian Janikowski to kick their way to a win. In terms of the passing game, you play Cooper because while the Browns are giving up just under 200 yards a game, they're allowing 2 TDs per game, pass TDs per game. I like Michael Crabtree as a wide receiver 3 because he's number 5 on targets among all NFL players at 24, which is as surprising as the Steve Smith stat. And then for Derek Carr, if you're going to play him just because there's some downside in this game, start him in 2 quarterback leagues. I think he'll do perfectly well. And then for the Browns, Travis Benjamin, he was a big waiver wire pick. A lot of people have added him this week. I like him in 14 to 16 team leagues. He's a boomer bust player. If he does it again this week, I think we'll be having a different rough conversation about him, but that's how I feel about him this week. And Isaiah Crowell, I think you play him. The Raiders are giving up 118 yards on the ground and 3 Ds total to date, plus some receiving yards. So I think Isaiah's due for a good game.
Yeah, it's just you're looking at it, the Raiders' offense against the Browns' defense. The Raiders are 9th in passing yards per game, but they're 23rd in rushing yards per game. And the Browns' defense is, like you said, they give up $160 a game, but they're 5th as far as giving up passing yards per game. So I don't think that matches up real well. And the Raiders giving up $118 themselves. At home, if the Browns can establish a running game, they control the clock, and they win the game. All right. Falcons at the Cowboys is the next one on the agenda. The 2-0 Atlanta Falcons welcome to Atlanta Dan Quinn versus the 2-0 Cowboys. Likewise, however, it's different kids because Tony Romo is out with that broken collarbone. In steps Matt Castle or Brandon Weeden. Either one of those two will be under center once they kick it off next week. The Falcons coming back to beat the Giants on the road 24-20. Do not underestimate what that means to win on the road early in the season. That is a major confidence booster, kids. I am not kidding you. I mean it with every fiber of my being. The defense, while the pass defense hasn't come together, we knew this team was going to struggle. The Cowboys, on the other hand, have played really good defense. But what this comes down to is, do you believe in the guy under center? I don't think so. And the Falcons, attacking defense, they're going to put multiple people in the box. They're going to try to confuse. They're going to agitate. They're going to try to make you beat them with either Brandon Weeden or Matt Castle. I don't think it can be done. I'm picking the Falcons on the road.
Ooh. Well, I'll tell you, this is a tough game to call. I'm taking the Cowboys, but in my confidence level, if number one were the least confident on earth, this is number 2. I mean, this is one of those games, in part for a bunch of reasons. That Cowboys defense has been playing so well. So I like Matt Ryan as a QB1 this week. This should not be one of his best games of the season. If he didn't thrive against the Giants last week, I don't think he'll be doing it against the Cowboys this week. Dallas allows an average of 204 yards to the passing game per game and just 1 TD on the season. That's pretty amazing. I do like Julio Jones. He's a weekly must-start. I think Devontae Freeman, he's a guy that you should consider sitting this week because the Cowboys are only giving up 53 yards rushing per game on the ground and 1 TD on the season. The Falcons' defense, I think there is a play in 14 to 16 team leagues, if only because Brandon Whedon's going to make mistakes, and I think they'll be there to capitalize. But when all is said and done, you've got the Cowboys, and in fantasy, you're going to start Joseph Randle. He's not going to have a great game, but I think he can get you 80 to 110 in a TD. A healthy Jason Witten would be a borderline TE1. If there's any questions about his health, go with your backup. And then with Terrence Williams, I think you got to look at him to blow it up as a wide receiver 2 and a wide receiver 3 this week. And Keith, it's a tough game. I'll stick with the Cowboys at home, but I would not be surprised if the Falcons ended up being the victors in this one.
Tampa Bay Buccaneers travel to the Houston Texans 1-1 Bucks, thanks to last week's big win over the Saints in New Orleans. No one saw that coming. No one, I tell you. If you did, you're lying. The Houston Texans 0-2, struggling to find the rhythm. Ryan Mallett in his first start, 27 of 58 for 244 yards. I'm sorry, kids. If Ryan Mallett is going to throw the ball 58 times, you're in for a long season. And the total absence of a running game in Houston, sans Arian Foster, is really troubling and should be troubling. For the Buccaneers, Jameis Winston, 14 of 21 for 207 yards last week with the touchdown, but Doug Martin, 21 rushes for 78 yards, and seems to be running well. That's this key sign for Bucs fans because he hasn't been himself the last couple of years at least. The Buccaneers come into this game with 6th in passing yards per game, 19th in rushing yards allowed per game. I'm sorry, that meant allowed, passing yards allowed. And they are 29th in giving up points. The Texans, on the other hand, while they have their warts, don't give up a whole lot of points. For all of their struggles, they just don't give up a whole lot of points. I think this is a team that's coming together. They're finding their legs. Ryan Mallett has done little to impress, but being at home and now a second full week, and Tampa's defense is not all that. I think this is a good week for him to get his feet under him, as long as he doesn't throw the ball more than 35 times. I'm going to pick the Texans to win this one at home and get off the schneid.
I'm going to take the Texans as well. I think this is another game where the Texans defense, they're the difference maker in it. I'm concerned for the Texans if DeAndre Hopkins ends up missing this weekend due to the concussion that apparently he sustained in practice today. If only because DeAndre Hopkins is another person who's had 24 targets on the season, tied for 5th most in the league. But there's at least some players behind him that can make up for his production. The Texans do need to get their rushing game going, but right now it's a committee, so you can't look at any one of those guys like Alfred Blue or Chris Polk for your fantasy league. For the Bucs, Mike Evans is a wide receiver too, and I know people are not happy with his production, but you still got to hang in there. Same thing with Vincent Jackson. The thing you have to understand about why these players are still playable this week is the Texans, while only giving up 205 passing yards per game, have given up a total of 5 passing TDs. So their value will come in getting into the end zone, which should happen in this game, because I just don't see Doug Martin necessarily being that guy. I mean, he had the opportunity last week in a much more favorable matchup, and he didn't. I do like him as an RB3 or as a flex with some upside, but it's just whether he gets to that upside or not. Jameis Winston is a QB2 quarterback. Avoid Ryan Mallett until he could put up a few games in a row with 2 TDs or more.
All right, the San Diego Chargers at the Minnesota Vikings. I saw a tweet today from, and I'm going to blank on the name right now, the NFL draft scout, but his real name is God, I shouldn't say Matt Miller. Thank you very much. Thank you, scroll button on my mouse, because I found it, and where he said that Phillip Rivers is a Hall of Famer, one of the all-time greats, grossly underrated, and I have to agree with him. That being said, gosh, the Chargers couldn't orchestrate a game-winning drive to save their lives last week against the Bengals, who were asking them to win this game. But if you're a Chargers fan, you were really encouraged by the progress Melvin Gordon made. 16 rushes for 88 yards, also another 10 yards receiving. For the Vikings, Teddy Bridgewater looked much better than he did in the Week 1 Monday night game against the San Francisco 49ers, and thank God for that. But Adrian Peterson had a key fumble, 29 rushes, though, for 134 yards. Maybe he was also your leading receiver as far as yards. That's troubling. That's not going to get it done, kids. The Vikings, though, have only allowed 36 points, which puts them ranked 6th. The defense, coming together under a new head coach, Mike Zimmer. I'm going to take the Vikings, but it's not a very confident pick because the Chargers do have a lot of weapons, and they are coming into their own, I think, on offense, especially with the rookie running back. I just like the defense, and it's at home, so I'm just gonna take the safe pick and pick the home team. Minnesota wins this one.
Yeah, Keith, I'm gonna go with the Vikings as well, but just like you, it's another game where I don't have a lot of confidence. And actually, to sort of explain this week, when you look at the defense and offensive matchups, they're really close. Which is why when you look at the body of defensive plays this week, trying to find that 1 week pickup and play, there's really nothing out there because no one has sort of a hands down give me, except maybe, let's say, the Patriots and the Seahawks. Outside of that, there are some teams that could challenge. And this is one of those games. I think this game, Adrian Peterson will be the difference maker. He's a must-start this week against a team giving up 122 rush yards per game to the position, 70 pass yards per game to the position, but only 1 TD. But let's look at Peterson to make it 2. I think you got to consider Mike Wallace as a borderline wide receiver 3. He's a wide receiver that I sort of, the way I put it is you barely have faith in him, but he's sort of the most productive out of the bunch. I mean, Charles Johnson's not doing it for you if you picked him up during your fantasy draft and thought he was going to be the difference maker this year, and certainly Jarius Wright isn't either. Teddy Bridgewater may or may not have a good game. A lot of people were excited last week because of his 2 TDs, but I wouldn't say it blew up the fantasy world. What would help is the fact that the Chargers are giving up an average of 223 pass yards per game, 5 total TDs on the season. So if he can put up 2 and rush for 1, that would make him an outstanding play, but I think he's a risky play this week nonetheless, and I don't recommend him. Phillip Rivers, on the other hand, I do like in fantasy because he's almost a guaranteed 240 TD quarterback week in, week out, and that's pretty much what the Vikings are giving up as an average through 2 games. Start Phillip Rivers. Melvin Gordon and Danny Woodhead, to me this week, are both RB3s or flexes. Reason being is the Vikings defense has only given up 134 yards on the ground per game, which is a lot, but you're splitting it up between 2 guys. And then they've given up two TDs on the season, so who's going to get that? And, so to me, you look at them both as RB3s and flexes, get them into your lineups in that fashion. Stevie Johnson, Keenan Allen, again, because of this sort of this Vikings defense that's going to cap the production of the Chargers offense, they're wide receiver threes this week. I think you try to start them in any way you can, but they don't. If you're only playing 2 wide receivers in your league, not 3, then you can look to bench either one of them. I'll take the Vikings at home too, but they're again in my group of confidence picks. They're amongst the top 5 least confident in terms of the games.
I love when we make picks and we tell people, but don't listen to us.
Well, no, but I mean the reality is, look, I can see the point of the Chargers could win this game.
Right.
It's a close call.
Right. If I was a betting man, but I'm not a betting man,
I'd avoid this game.
Yeah, that's not. It's just oof. It's ugly. The Jacksonville Jaguars travel to the New England Patriots. Hey, Jaguars fans, if you were looking for progress, how about the 9th best scoring defense through 2 weeks, only giving up 40 points? your acid in your stomach bubbles low when you realize that you've only scored 32. But, signs of life here. Blake Bortles, 18-33 last week for 273 yards and 2 touchdowns. Allen Robinson, just change his name to Allen Real Deal Robinson. 6 receptions, 155 yards for 2 touchdowns. TJ Yeldon, the rookie, 25 rushes for 70 yards in the surprising win over the Miami Dolphins. The New England Patriots strolled into Buffalo, a city that was full of swagger and a whole lot of talk, and just laid the smack down. I'm sorry. They gave up 19 points in the fourth quarter to make it interesting, but this was 40-13 until that little flurry in the fourth quarter. The Patriots, for all of the Deflategate chaos leading up to the game, are second in points scored. They give up a bunch of points, but they're +2 in takeaway differentials. They're first in passing yards per game. But they just will not run the ball. This team will not run the ball. They don't want to. They have no desire to. They've given up a bunch of yards and points. So the question is, do you believe that Blake Bortles can take advantage of the New England Patriots and go into Foxborough and pull off an upset? I know that's crazy talk. I don't either. I'm going to take the Patriots.
From a fantasy perspective, start your Patriots this week. LeGarrette Blount is sort of the wild card because Deion Lewis has been, getting so much play, especially in the passing game. So you start Deion Lewis, Tom Brady as usual, Rob Gronkowski, Julian Edelman. Start the Patriots defense. You can look at LeGarrette Blount. He's a risky, I think, flex play where he would get his value is if they really, really take off with the lead and just decide to run the ball to work the clock down. That's where he'll come into play. Are they going to do that? I can't tell you that for sure one way or the other. In terms of Jaguars, Tevin Coleman has a good matchup because the Patriots defense has given up close to 150 rushing yards per game and 3 rush TDs on the season. So Tevin Coleman could do something, but whatever he's going to do, it's probably going to be at the beginning of the game, unless they really open up his involvement in the passing game. So look at Tevin Coleman as a running back too, and hope that he gets you 100 yards and a score early. Allen Robinson must start after last week's performance. Put him in as a wide receiver too. Blake Bortles is going to be chucking the ball. I'd stay away from him just because you never know how many interceptions he might end up throwing. But you got to think he's going to be good for 2 TDs, and at least one of them is going to go to Allen Robinson. Got Patriots at home, no brainer. Very confident about that, Keith.
All right, we're at the halfway mark. Let's take a breather here. Let's catch our breath. You're listening to. We're going to come back and head through the second half of Sunday's slate. We're just going to be gone for a couple minutes, kids. Don't miss us, rather, too much. You're listening to the Fantasy Greek Starts and Sits in 60 Minutes, Week 3 edition on Late Night Sports Radio. I did it. I did it again. Wrong button.
Maybe I could offer up
Who the hell can wait till morning? Talk now at latenightsportsradio.com.
All right, the Fantasy Greek starts and sits in 60 minutes here on Late Night Sports Radio. Keith Grieve and Jim Sarantias taking you through all the Week 3 matchups to give you your much-needed fantasy football advice. If you're 0-2, if you're 1-1, hell, if you're 2-0, you cannot get comfortable. Head over to thefantasygreek.com, sign up for the Skybox, and get all of the inside info, the up-to-date last-minute rankings and news. That's thefantasygreek.com. All right, we are halfway.
Wow. What did you just guzzle down a liter of Coke?
I did go to the Keurig machine during the break.
Nice.
And now I'm guzzling coffee at 11:40 at night. I don't know how smart that is, but
yeah. For everyone listening out there, it's been a long day for the both of us, but we are here not to disappoint.
Right. We're here.
Reward our listeners with the knowledge that a good, long, hard day's work can bring us.
The gauntlet has been thrown down.
Yes.
The Philadelphia Eagles travel to the New York Jets. The 2-0 Jets. Todd Bowles, the darling of New York, is praying Geno Smith's jaw does not heal anytime soon. Because Ryan Fitzmagic has provided just enough to get them over there. The Jets are 9th in the league over the first 2 weeks in points scored, and they've given up just 17 points. That's good for first overall. The Eagles, on the other hand, have been absolutely adrift on offense. Have not looked like anything like the Eagles' offenses that we've seen the last 2 years from Chip Kelly and company. Sam Bradford has not looked good at all. And today, DeMarco Murray pulls up with a lame hamstring. Is going to have some MRI work done on that. Good luck with that, because you know what? Besides all the stats I just said, the Jets have also have a +8 takeaway differential after 2 weeks. +8. That's ridiculous. I'm picking the Jets at home just because I have no reason to believe the Eagles will be anything proficient in this game.
It's hard to believe in the Eagles this week, and you know, the Jets should walk out of Week 3 3-0. I mean, Sam Bradford. You'd like to think that they could sit down this week and work out what their troubles were last week, and they could. I mean, this is the NFL, and things can change abruptly and quickly. But the Jets have been playing some great defensive ball, and I like the Jets for defense and special teams for a start this week. I like Brandon Marshall as a wide receiver 1. Wide receiver 2, especially if Eric Decker should miss this week because of injury. If Decker does not, he'll be penciled in as a wide receiver 3 in your lineup. If he's out, look for Quincy Enunwa to pick up the slack. I wouldn't give Quincy a start unless you were absolutely desperate, but nonetheless, keep an eye out for what happens for Decker, and treat Chris Ivory as an RB2. If you could say one thing about the Eagles, their rush defense is actually pretty good, only allowing an average of 107 yards rushing, which if you're Chris Ivory's on your team, that should be good enough for you to be worthwhile. For the Eagles, really the only player I like is Jordan Matthews. In 2 weeks, he's had 16 receptions for 182 yards and 1 TD. The Jets do give up roughly 230 yards passing per game, and an average of 1 TD per game, and Matthews seems to me to be the most logical receiver of those yards and the score, so keep him active in all formats. This whole DeMarco Murray thing, obviously if he doesn't play, Ryan Matthews should get the start over him. The best either one could be as an RB2, and for Matthews I'd even push him more towards an RB3. Jets are 3-0.
And what was Quincy's last name?
Isn't it Enunwa?
You should not start him unless you can pronounce it. I'm just saying. That should be like a fantasy. I'm not saying you're wrong. I have no idea. I'm just saying there should be a fantasy bylaw somewhere that you cannot start the guy if you can't pronounce his name.
Look, it's Enuwa. I think that's Enunwa.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
God bless you.
If I'm wrong, sorry, Quincy.
The Pittsburgh Steelers travel to the St. Louis Rams, and at first I was tempted to pick against the Steelers, and I'm going to tell you why. The defense is nothing to jump and shout about, kids. It's just not. Even though they're middle of the road as far as points allowed, you watch this team play, and they have no shred of coverage ability in the secondary. They're 27th out of 32 teams as far as passing yards surrendered. But at the end of the day, regardless of whatever magic the Rams were able to conjure up to beat the Seahawks at home in Week 1, Ben Roethlisberger is a top 5 quarterback, if not top 3. And it's funny because my wife is in our fantasy league and she has Ben Roethlisberger, and in the first possession, the Steelers didn't score a touchdown, so she's like, "Ugh, I should have started Tannehill." I'm like, "Really?" I'm like, "Really?" I'm like, "I'll go make a trade right now. I'll go put it in right now for next week if you don't want him that bad." And obviously by the end of the game, she realized the error of her ways. 21 of 27 for Roethlisberger, 369 yards and 3 touchdowns. Antonio Brown, 9 catches for 195 yards and a touchdown. D'Angelo Williams, 77 yards and 3 scores on the ground. But welcome back, Le'Veon Bell. That's the story for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Not that D'Angelo Williams has done anything to make them worry about the running game in the first 2 weeks. He's been fantastic. The Rams are giving up 153 yards on the ground. It's un-Rams-like, un-Fisher-like, and I don't know if it'll continue all season long, but the Steelers are a real tough matchup. I'm picking Pittsburgh on the road.
Yeah, you got to take Pittsburgh on the road on this one. And, I think part of it had to do with how well the Redskins played them last week. And I just think that when you put Ben Roethlisberger, Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown, Heath Miller, and D'Angelo Williams will get some work, all on the field at one time. And behind that offensive line, which I think is why D'Angelo Williams was so successful in these past 2 weeks. The Rams, if they couldn't beat the Redskins, there's no way they're going to beat the Steelers from that perspective. And all the Steelers I've mentioned, they are all must-starts in fantasy this week, with the exception of D'Angelo Williams. I would put him more as an RB4, sort of a very low flex play, just because we don't know exactly how he's going to be used. But you figure, they're going to use him somehow just to at least spell Le'Veon Bell. For the Rams, Trey Mason, RB3 flex play maybe at best. Most teams get stuck in a passing fight with the Steelers, and their running back doesn't get to make a lot of noise. So if you have Trey Mason, there's some risk here in playing him unless he gets his yardage and a score early. Otherwise, it's Nick Foles. Nick Foles, this is the Steelers are giving close to 300 yards passing per game and 6 pass TDs on the season. I'm not advocating you start Nick Foles this week, but I'm advocating that he should have a great, terrific game. If you want play him in a daily fantasy football league in one of those tournaments with 20 million people, and nobody should be picking Nick Foles. And if Nick Foles blows it up, obviously you'll have yourself a good day in daily fantasy. Other than that, it's hard to pick anybody else on the Rams. I mean, Kenny Britt, he's 4 receptions, 81 yards, and 1 TD on the season. I mean, that's just not, at best he's a flex play. Brian Quick, their best wide receiver, looks like he'll get back on the field this week. But the question is how quickly he'll be reincorporated into the offense. And while the Steelers give up the second most fantasy points to tight ends, your guess is as good as mine, whether it's Jared Cook or what's his name, Kendricks. Kendricks from the Rams will be the more dominant of the tight end, so you just sort of have to stay away from that. In what should end up being a high-scoring game, Steelers win on the road.
How mad would you be if you're the Tennessee Titans? If you go out, you win Week 1 against Tampa Bay, you lost last week in Cleveland in a game that you put up some shots. You were trying to come back. It was a valiant effort. And then the mess that is the Indianapolis Colts at 0-2 are slated to come into your house, and they're favored by 3.5. So, the home team gets 3 points just for being at home. So that means on a neutral field, the Titans are still looked at as being almost a touchdown worse, or a touchdown worse, than the Indianapolis Colts, the same Indianapolis Colts whose quarterback, Andrew Luck, who is fantastic. I'm not trying to say, oh, look, Andrew Luck is a pile of crap. I'm not saying that at all. But he's thrown 5 interceptions in 2 games. That's very unlucky. See what I did there? But the other thing is, kids, they've only scored 21 points in 2 games. The Colts offense is a mess. And the Titans, while, yes, they got a rookie quarterback and they no real, stud running back to build behind, and their wideouts are suspect as well. Kendall Wright was nursing an ankle injury, I believe, during the game last year. He's not on the injury report today, but he did leave the game. Chance Warmack is the big injury right there, I believe, in my opinion, alongside Delaney Walker for the Titans. But the Titans' defense is only giving up 169 passing yards a game. I mean, and you're coming in with a passing offense, supposedly, because you signed Frank Gore, but he hasn't done much for you in 2 games. He's only got 88 yards rushing, so, you can't tell me all of a sudden you found a commitment to the run. And the Colts are favored by 3.5? I'm not digging that at all. And you know what? Based on the defense, not so much the offense, but this is don't forget, guys, this is a Dick LeBeau defense now. So I think at home, you're going to see a little bit more of what you saw week 1. And while Andrew Luck will not struggle like Jameis Winston did, I'm picking Tennessee at home to win this game.
Ooh, laying it all out there. Well, this is a week where I think the Colts sort of got to know themselves and dig deep down inside and realize, we're a better team than our 0-2 record, and we should be playing better, and we can't lose to the Titans. So I don't just think they're going out there as the better team. I think they are determined to win this game no matter how. And they're going to come out and give more effort than they've given in 2 games into this game. This is a game where this offense should right the ship. We should see T.Y. Hilton, Dante Moncrief both get in the end zone. It will be a passing game. I'm not a big fan of Frank Gore this week. I see him more as an RB3. I think Andrew Luck is a top 5 start this week. T.Y. Hilton start him. Dante Moncrief, who's been just a pleasant surprise through these first 2 weeks, get him in there. He's being heavily targeted. You could even get Kobe Fleener in there only if Dwayne Allen is a scratch. He's injured right now. It just remains to be seen whether he'll actually suit up. For the Titans, you can pencil in Marcus Mariota as a second quarterback in 2 quarterback leagues. I love Kendall Wright this week. The Colts have given up 220 yards passing on average, 3 total TDs on the season. I could see him earmarked for a score this week. And Bishop Sankey, look at him as an RB3 or a flex. The Colts are also weak at the rush, giving up 124 yards per game, 1 TD. Bishop Sankey should be in line for that, but I still think that regardless of Dick LeBeau, regardless of the improvements the Titans have made, they're still not good enough to keep up with this Colts team. Colts win.
The Indianapolis Colts with the 5th worst rated offense at Pro Football Focus. But if it makes you feel any better, Colts fans, the Broncos are actually worse than you. Yes, the Peyton Manning Broncos. Those Broncos. The San Francisco 49ers are at the Arizona Cardinals, the 2-0 Cardinals. 2-0 Cardinals based on a free trip to Chicago, kids, which reinvigorated wide receiver Larry Fitzgerald. The 49ers have looked god-awful in Jim Tomsula's first 2 games. They did manage to win one, but oh my God, they were not impressive in the Week 1 win against Minnesota. And last week, well, Kaepernick threw the ball 46 times, completed 33 for 335 yards, and did eventually get 2 touchdowns. But the Steelers tore this defense apart, especially through the air. Absolutely tore it apart, kids. I'm telling you, it was not close at all. The 49ers are 26th in the league in defensive passing yards allowed per game. They do hold. They've only given up 77 rushing yards. And their scoring defense is right in the middle of the road. For the Arizona Cardinals, you've thought of the Cardinals as primarily a defensive team the last couple of years. Not this year. They are first in the NFL in points scored. That's right, 79 points for the Arizona Cardinals. Again, thank you, Chicago. But they have been stingy on defense, and they are neutral in the takeover differential category. So now here's where it comes down, kids. This is a division game. it's at home. I tend to pick home teams in these kind of games, in these situations. San Francisco has not shown me anything, especially in their pass defense, which is almost as bad. Nobody is as bad, but almost as bad as the Bears' pass defense. I look for a big week for Carson Palmer and Larry Fitzgerald. Personally, again, I'm taking Arizona at home.
Yeah, I think you have to do that. This is a Cardinals defense that's on average giving up 81 rush yards, 290 pass yards, but just one rushing score in 2 pass scores in 2 weeks. I mean, there's no way that the 49ers offense will be able to keep up with the kind of offense that the Cardinals should generate, where the 49ers have given up 3 rushing touchdowns and 3 passing touchdowns in 2 weeks. Carson Palmer, I mean, boy, this guy's found the fountain of youth. I don't think there's a defense out there right now that is challenging him. He's found it just by taking what teams give him, whether it's been a tight end, whether it's been Larry Fitzgerald. John Brown one day is going to have himself a big game. The running backs could have a big game, even though maybe not this week. I like Carson Palmer as a top 5 start. Larry Fitzgerald is a must start. Cardinals defense is a top 5 start. Look at Chris Johnson and David Johnson as RB3 flexes this week. For the 49ers, Colin Kaepernick is the best at QB2. He'll be you could use him in a 2 quarterback leagues, obviously. Carlos Hyde, even though this is a tough matchup for him, I think you keep playing him. He just showed so much in that first game. And they should be. If they can commit to the run, the 49ers could keep this game in control. But I doubt that will happen. Eventually it will get away from him. I like Anquan Boldin as a wide receiver 3 based on his rapport with Colin Kaepernick. And Torrey Smith is at best a wide receiver 4, possibly a flex play depending what your options are. But like you said, Keith, division game at home, Cardinals win.
The Buffalo Bills travel to the Miami Dolphins. This is a long-time rivalry. The two teams do not like each other. The Bills just got smacked around by the Patriots, and the Dolphins lost a heartbreaker to the Jaguars in Jacksonville. If I would have told you before the season that the Bills would be 4th in the league in scoring and 24th in defensive scoring, you would have told me you got it backwards there, schmuckhead. But nope, that's exactly what the Bills are right now. But they are only giving up 60 yards per game on the ground. Why is that of note, Dolphins fans? Well, Lamar Miller is questionable as of today with an ankle injury as well. And with the rookie Ajayi, I said that wrong, is on the injured reserve until week 10. It's going to be real interesting who's running the ball for Miami right there. The only good thing is that the Bills are second to dead last in defensive passing yards per game. Yes, Tom Brady was a big chunk of those numbers last week. Is Ryan Tannehill Tom Brady? Absolutely not. But you know what? He did throw for 359 last week and 2 touchdowns. He's going to be able to pass the ball. And it's, like I said, a rivalry game at home. I pick the Dolphins.
You know, this is one of these games where when you look at it, you say to yourself, what kind of game are we going to get out of these guys? Both teams were originally top 5 rated defenses. While the Bills had a great week 1, the Miami's struggled in their first 2 games defensively. The Bills obviously struggled last week against the Patriots, and the Patriots basically laid a roadmap out there for Miami to follow in playing them this week. So I like the Dolphins at home. Hopefully they've gotten a wake-up call to get their defense going. You look at Ryan Tannehill, he's a QB1 this week, a lower-end guy. Jarvis Landry, keep him started as a wide receiver 2. You look at the Dolphins' defense as a low DST1. But Lamar Miller, I hate to say it, even if he's healthy, I think he's a potential sit, if only because the Bills, no one's really rushing against them. At least the Patriots didn't, so I'd like to think that won't happen again. For the Bills, LaShawn McCoy makes for a pretty strong start. While the Dolphins haven't given up a rushing touchdown yet, they're giving up an average of 140 rush yards per game. Sammy Watkins, wide receiver 3, Percy Harvin, wide receiver 3. Tyrod Taylor, I'm not all that too giddy up about him being a must-start yet. I know he was a hot waiver ad, but I think he was a hot waiver ad for anyone that had quarterback problems, such as Tony Romo, Drew Brees, Jay Cutler. In those instances, you're going to play him. But if you have Cam Newton, there's no way you're starting Tyrod Taylor over Cam Newton. In the end, I think the Dolphins should control this. Like you said, Keith, they know each other. I was looking at their 2 games from last year. They fought against each other the first time around. The second time around, it looked like some more points got put up on the board. I like the chances of the Dolphins actually last year at home. Let's see, the Dolphins won 22-9. So I like the chances of a similar score this year.
All right, the Chicago Bears travel to the Seattle Seahawks. There's not a lot of breaking down that needs to go into this, kids. Jimmy Clausen starting for the Bears in Seattle. I'm picking the Seahawks at home. But I will say this. The Seattle Seahawks have the second worst and the third worst rated pass blocking and run blocking performance through 2 weeks. The Bears have not had a sack by anybody. They have not had a sack in 2 games. Okay? If they can't get to the quarterback on this day, fire everybody. Once again, Seattle at home.
For fantasy purposes, you're starting your key Seahawks, Russell Wilson, Marshawn Lynch. Doug Baldwin, I think, will actually have the best Seahawks fantasy game. Jimmy Graham will finally get into the end zone and stop his crying. Seahawks defense should be absolutely suffocating. However, as the game progresses, we could start seeing some garbage time. For the Bears, Matt Forte is sort of an RB1, RB2, because he's their best guy. So if you're the Seahawks, you're thinking, well, there's Jimmy Clausen. All we really have to do here is stop Matt Forte. So while I think he's going to touch the ball a whole ton, I don't know that he's going to do anything better than 100 all-purpose yards and a score. But for fantasy purposes, that should be enough for you. Martellus Bennett is sort of a borderline TE1, TE2. If you have somebody that's better, obviously go with them. But other than that, Martellus is going to be the best passing option. Because right now, Alshon Jeffrey isn't practicing. He looks hurt. And if you're the Bears, why in the heck are you going to roll him out in a game that you're going to lose? Am I wrong here, Keith?
No, I totally agree with you. I'm playing morbid music in the background for the Bears part of this.
It's just so sad. And you know what's funny is I don't understand why John Fox is even. I guess he's been said today. If Jay Cutler's healthy this weekend, he could still play. I'm not ruling him out. And I thought, you don't have to hide it. I mean, it's okay to say he'll be out this week.
Yeah. It's okay to say you're not comfortable with Jimmy Clausen. We all know it. But we're running out of time here. So Denver Broncos at the Detroit Lions here. The 2-0 Broncos, something seemed to click about midway through the second quarter against the Kansas City Chiefs last week. And then they won in an incredible way with their defense scooping up a fumble and running it back for the game-winning score. A really good game to watch on TV. Peyton Manning, 26-45 for only 256 yards, but 3 touchdowns. Demaryius Thomas broke the century mark. For the Lions, a loss in Minnesota. Matthew Stafford, 286 and 2 touchdowns. Calvin Johnson, 10 catches for 83 yards, touchdown. Really pedestrian numbers for those guys compared to what we've seen over the years. You're going into Detroit, controlled situation indoors, very similar to Lucas Oil Stadium back in the day. It will be nice on Peyton's withering arm. I'm going to take, I'm taking the Broncos on the road here.
Yeah, the Broncos, what we saw last week certainly gives a little bit more confidence and credence to saying Peyton Manning is still a top fantasy quarterback. He may not be top 5, but he's still a top guy. The Lions defense is not doing well. They're giving up a bunch of scores, close to 300 yards passing. So you're starting Manning, Demaryius Thomas, and Emmanuel Sanders. For all you C.J. Anderson fantasy owners out there, look, I have him on one of my teams too, and I'm as disappointed as you are in how he's been playing. But this is a game that things should get well. The Lions are giving close to 150 rushing yards per game, 4 rush TDs on the season. You keep him active and expect him to do something this week. For the Lions, let's pray Matt Stafford is healthy. It looks like he will be, because that's their best shot to keep up with the Broncos, who have a tough defense. You start the Broncos defense and then look for Matt Stafford for a couple of TDs. Amir Abdullah and RB2 flex play this week. Calvin Johnson, you keep him started. Golden Tate, keep him started. And I think a sneaky play is Eric Ebron. Even though he's only maybe got 80 yards receiving, he scored a touchdown in the past 2 weeks, and he's being targeted in the offense quite obviously and for a tight end quite heavily. So you could look at him as an option this week. Broncos win.
The Chiefs at the Packers in the Monday night game. This game is a little bit more evenly matched than I think everybody wants to admit. But the big difference here is that the Chiefs don't defend the pass very well, and the Packers have some guy named Aaron Rodgers starting for them at quarterback. I'm going to take the Packers at home.
I think this is a very similar game to the Denver Broncos-Chiefs game from last week. except it's on the road for the Chiefs and in Lambeau Field, which is never a good thing. Aaron Rodgers must start. Randall Cobb must start. Devontae Adams, James Jones must start. Richard Rodgers, high TE2 tight end this week, but you can get him on the gridiron. Hopefully he'll get you a TD to make it worthwhile. This could be a lopsided game. I don't think the Packers defense is a bad start. Are they the best start? No, but with so many limited defenses out there, I think you can start them if you got them. For the Chiefs, they're going to have to pass the football here. So I like Alex Smith. I think he's a borderline QB1 this week. If you need to go to him, you can. Jamal Charles, a must start. Jeremy Maclin's not having the kind of season that people thought he would do right there at the end when his value suddenly skyrocketed up. But this is an opportunity for him, and he should get his first score of the season. And Travis Kelce should also get into the end zone once more. Packers win.
Wow. And we finished up in a flurry there at the end there. That was really impressive for us.
Well, they were really sort of easy games to play.
And with that, we are out of time. Every Wednesday, folks, at 11 p.m. Eastern Time, right here at LateNightSportsRadio.com. But if you can't catch us live, you can catch us on demand on the Spreaker app at LateNightSportsRadio.com. And also available on iTunes and on Stitcher. Whatever your platform happens to be of choice, you can find us. We'll be there. For Jim Sarantias from thefantasygreek.com, I'm Keith Gree from 87sportsfans.com. Have a great week, and may the football gods be in your favor.
Turn out the lights, the party's over.